Bow hunters, welcome back to another episode. Today I'm excited to have Joshua James with me, the Kiwi Bushman. Josh, welcome, mate.
Thank you, Matty.
So, I've been watching your videos since I pretty much started getting into this hunting realm a little bit more and having a bit more interest into the whole hunting world and bow hunting. And it all came up because someone shared one of your YouTube videos to a Facebook group that I was following along with, saying, "Hey, this guy has some pretty good tips around red deer." So I got hooked on one video, then all of a sudden that was pretty much my nighttime binging for the next week or so. I kind of went through and looked at a whole heap of your different videos. But I mean, people can head across to your YouTube channel, which is the Kiwi Bushman. There is a whole heap of really cool content on there. Where did that all start?
Started 5 years ago. Oh, how did it start? Well, I kind of magicked it up actually. 6 years ago, we had a bit of financial difficulty. We had a couple of really bad rafting seasons, and I injured myself, so I was out for 6 months, and the Accident Compensation Corporation weren't really paying me enough. I didn't even have enough money to cover the mortgage, so a lot of my creditors didn't get paid, and the main creditor, luckily, he said, James Scott Heli Services, actually, which you hunters, if you come to New Zealand tahr hunting, you'll be flying with James. He's a real good bugger. He just said, don't worry, pay me when you can. And so me and Kristen, my wife, we sat down and we decided to, there was a lot of relationship stress as well with the monetary stress, and you know what it's like when you run out of money and you get stressed. It was very stressful. And I just said, hey, who cares if we go bankrupt? We'll lose the house and we'll lose the business, but I can just go back to traveling the world being a raft guide, and I'll go to the far north and I'll just go on the dole and catch snapper or something. It's just look at the positives. So we just ignored all the negatives. We brainstormed all of the positives and what we could possibly do to make money further down the track. Because I could have gone and worked in the mines, right? Everyone here works in the mines. They go work in the coal mines or the gold mines, driving a digger or driving a truck. I didn't want to do that. That felt like selling my soul. So we come up with all these other ideas, and then I went back to work in the wintertime. I was trapping possums at the time. Fur trapper up in the mountains. I'd go deep bush for about a week, 10 days at a time, helicopter in and stay in there, then raft or kayak back out with all the skins and the fur. And so I went back in the bush, and when I was back in there, I had my little GoPro with me. Now, I'd already learned how to work a camera because of my rafting business. So I bought a camera and editing suite and all the rest of it, taught myself how to make videos, but I'd never been in front of the camera. So when I was possum trapping, the camera became my Wilson, from Castaway. Right? You talk to a soccer ball. It's real lonely being out in the bush. Anyone who's spent any kind of time alone out in the wilderness can appreciate it is lonely. There's no one to talk to. You spent alone all day, alone all night. So I started talking to the GoPro, and I made a little video for my mate in Canada who wanted to know what the hell I was doing. Because I said, I'm trapping possums. I'm a possum plucker. And he said, you're a possum what? And I said, he's a possum plucker. And he's like, what do you mean? You get paid to do that shit? And I was like, yeah. So he couldn't understand. He couldn't figure out the whole plucking them for the fur. So I made a video of it. And, you may have seen that video, actually.
Yes, I have.
Possum whisperer with a sleepy stick, and he sniffs the flower. Yeah, so I made a video, and that got rave reviews. I shared it on Facebook, I think, or it must have been Facebook, and heaps of people went, that's gold, that's so good, do another one. So when I got back to the land of the living, and after I shared this, I sat down and I thought, hang on a minute, maybe I can get my own hunting show on TV. So I rang up a few television stations, and they said, you need to film a pilot and all the rest of it. So we did that, filmed a pilot and got a brand name sorted, and they said, no, we're not interested because hunting isn't that popular. No one will watch it. For crying out loud. So I thought about it, and I thought, well, if I just start a YouTube channel and a Facebook page and a brand and a website, maybe I'll chip away at it for a year or so, and then after I make a few videos or make a series, then a television station might approach me and say, actually, it's not too bad, we'll do this. And because that's what Matt Watson done from the ITM fishing show. You familiar with Matt Watson?
Yes.
Yeah. So him and his mates just started filming this shit on a homemade handycam, and the television station said, hey, this is good, we'll buy that off you. So I was kind of thinking that was going to happen, but it didn't quite work out that way. But the way it's worked out now is even better, because I'm not bound by any kind of restraints or laws in my productions, and I can make them rough as guts and raw, and I think people just appreciate that. They're brutally honest, as you well know, being one of my viewers. And I cock shit up heaps, and I think people just really appreciate that I'm one of the blokes. I'm not the perfect, I never miss a shot, I never gut shoot an animal. I gut shoot animals all the time. I lose animals, I shoot them and lose them, and everyone's judging and shaking their hands and pointing the finger. But if you're a hunter, it's only a matter of
happen.
time before I don't do it all the time. Not every hunt I go out, It happens occasionally. Yeah, so I think that's how I came. Though that's how I got to where I am anyway. Pretty much I just magicked it up.
Yeah, that's unreal. I
And
mean,
persistence and hard work and long hours.
exactly. I mean, the big thing is that you kind of had a bit of a vision and you just kept working towards it. And I think that's where that stuff really does come into key. People often think like, oh, visualization's a bullshit thing. But when you actually do it like that, where you start to think about it so much, you start to work towards it, it becomes almost like a goal that you're working towards instead. It's incredible what you can kind of see come out of it. And like we were talking about before we started recording, it's kind of like your main gig now. Like it's literally what you do is get out, do those little videos and show them out to people around the world.
Yep, that's my main gig. So I'm lucky enough. After doing it for 2 years, I wasn't making any money. I picked up a couple of clothing sponsors, which was great. Stony Creek gave me some clothes and some boots. And the kind of big break came when I got a boat sponsor. I got a 4.2 meter fishing vessel, which was awesome. And then 2 years after that, which was 1 year ago today, that got replaced. And now I've got a 5.8 meter. And then they're just building me another one at the moment, another bigger one. So
it's a beast.
Getting that boat kind of kept me going. I was like, oh, who cares if I'm not making money? I've got a boat,
That's what every man needs.
For free. I've got a boat. And then got a jet boat sponsor, which was great. And then eventually I realized I don't have any gas to put in my damn boat because I'm working for free. So I told the general public this. I said, look, I don't quite know how to do this, but I'm not making any money. TV doesn't want to pick me up. I got that Discovery Channel series, which was great, but then that didn't get season 2, so I had to go back to the YouTube vids. And one of my viewers suggested a website called Patreon, which is a pay-per-view website.
Yeah.
So I went pay-per-view, and the not majority of my viewers, but a lot of my viewers were more than happy to give me $7 a month to watch my vids, and I bring out one video a week now. And I've got my family involved, and I do cooking and gardening, and so now it's not only the hunters, it's the hunters and their wives as well, and all their kids watch it. So I've kind of hooked a broader audience in, so to speak, with the family stuff and the gardening, and I do a bit of motivational stuff now as well. And it's worked really, really well actually.
No, it's really cool. It's really cool to see. I mean, I have seen some of your more recent videos where you guys kind of show off the whole garden and the kids get into it, and the kids run around with your chooks and your different animals and bits and pieces, and you're kind of really showing what life can be like when you're away from the city, and almost like where you can really cultivate and live your own lifestyle the way that you want to live it. And something that you have said is like, hey guys, you can get out and you can make shit happen if you really want it to happen, which I think is really powerful, and it's something that so many people get lost in just doing their day-to-day when it comes to like being a tradie, or just they almost let their job title become their whole description of life. Like, okay, my life is I'm a builder, and whatever else happens to me only happens because I'm a builder. Whereas I think so many people need to get to the point of, well, hold up, life is happening whether I'm going to be a part of it or not, so I may as well be a part of it and enjoy it a hell of a lot.
Mate, that's so true. I'm glad you touched base on that actually, because a lot of what I do is encouraging people out there to really enjoy whatever situation they've got in life. And a lot of people get stuck in these ruts and they can't help it because they get a career and they get a house and a car and they make the money, and then they don't want to take a step back in lifestyle, and they start a new job and they think it's great and they love it. Then 5 years down the track, they're dissatisfied and they don't like their job anymore, and they're feeling a little bit lost, and life isn't so enjoyable. And with the social media thing, everyone's searching for happiness, right? Yeah. Happiness and enjoyment are two totally different things. So I really encourage people to make the most out of life. It's like my kids. They have to go to school, and I tell them, I say, kids, you guys got to go to school. My middle boy, Charlie, he's 8 years old. I hate school. I don't want to go to school, Dad. I was like, mate, you've got to go to school. I sat him down and gave him a pep talk, and I said, boys, you've got to do it. You might as well enjoy it. Stop telling yourself you don't enjoy it. Start telling yourself, actually, it's not so bad. I showed him a video of those kids that work in the diamond mines in Africa, underground, in the hole, in the mud, digging up diamonds for a hand of people. Yeah. And I said, these guys make just enough to buy a little bowl of food at the end of the day, and that's it. That's their life. They don't go to school. They don't get educated. They're not going to have any opportunities further down the track. You guys are extremely lucky. And another analogy I like to use is we all live in this quarter-acre section, right? We all live in this little section, and we've all got our garden, and we've got, a little green over there and a nice lawn, and we've got the bit over there that doesn't grow so well. It's all brown, and we've got a shed, and it's got some tools in it. We've got a nice house, but we're always looking at the next-door neighbour's place, and, man, they've got a massive garden. Look at their vegetable garden, and they've got a massive house, and their shed's got heaps of shit. They've got a boat in their shed. Why don't I have a boat in my shed? So we start to feel dissatisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And social media is really driving this, right? It's really driving
definitely.
it. And everyone forgets to look over their shoulder at the poor old fella down the road that lives in the cardboard box that doesn't have a yard. He lives in the gutter in a ditch. You know, he's Oscar he lives in the trash can.
Yeah, Sesame Street.
And they're just so focused on that green grass.
Mm-hmm.
And for probably the last 3 years, my grass has been getting greener and greener and greener. I've really been enjoying myself. I'm starting to make a bit of money, but I'm still looking over the fence at that green grass. As soon as you hit that green grass, there's another fence in the way with more green grass on the other side, and it does not stop.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to tell people. Is like, okay, fair call. Don't stop looking at the green grass on the other side of the fence and stick your head through and have a bit of a chew on it occasionally. You know, don't go beating yourself trying to push through the barbed wire to get in there.
Yeah.
Just enjoy your own paddock and water the brown spots and do a bit of weeding and plant some more seeds, and be prepared when you finally do get to that green grass. Don't close the gate behind you, because you might have to jump back in that brown paddock, or you just might have to take a step down in lifestyle. And then I encourage people to set goals, set goals and break everything down. And once the mind realizes it can achieve a goal, that goal suddenly becomes achievable, and the mind kicks a plan into action. Where if it's just a pipe dream, then they're never going to achieve that goal. So by all means, be goal orientated, write that shit down, break it down into small little steps, start to build that dream and achieve that goal. And if you're not happy, get out of it.
Yeah,
the current job may just be a stepping stone. For example, I've done heaps of shit jobs. I've worked heaps of forestry, shearing sheep, worked in factories, concrete labouring, worked on a farm, heaps of jobs, heaps and heaps. And most of them have been shit jobs, but they've always been stepping stones for me to get a little bit of money in my back burner so I can move on to the next thing, to what I really want to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think that seeing the grass is greener on the other side is also a little bit good for setting a better goal, because you can say, oh, well, how did they get there, and what can I do to get there? What am I doing right now that might not be serving me to be able to get there? And then once you get there, you're always going to have bigger and better goals, and that's the best thing about it. But like you said, you have to be willing to potentially take a step back to take 5 forward.
That's right. Yep.
That's really cool. Because the podcast is on bow hunting, where did you start bow hunting? Like, where did you come into hunting in general?
Well, I started hunting since I was pretty much from 2 years old. I can remember wanting to chase shit down. That's my earliest memory, when I was 2, living in Australia, actually, in Brisbane.
Oh, that's where I am now.
I remember chasing bugs and spiders and shit. And I just wanted to chase shit. And of course, that naturally gravitated till I was, how old was I? I must have been 6 or 7, I guess, when I started hunting. We used to hunt rats with Shanghais down in the local creek.
Yeah.
And we had bows and arrows and whatnot. We had this shitty old fiberglass bow that my dad bought for us, and arrows, but we knew nothing about the paradigm, the paradox, the archer's paradox, which is what the arrow does. So none of our arrows were spined for our bows, and we didn't know anything about aiming or technique or form. We just shot bows and arrows around. And we got to be reasonable shot, but we were never deadly accurate. Like you can become with instinctive. Are you instinctive or are you compound?
Now I've got both, and so I'm instinctive with my recurve. I've had a little bit of a play with it and tried to do a bit of point on stuff, which was good, but I prefer to go instinctive. But I do have a compound. Yep. It's kind of like my main gig at the moment.
Awesome. Just asking, I don't reckon those compounds are actually bows. They should be called handheld trebuchets or handheld ballistas or something. They're so complicated, and it's just a sight. And so I actually tried compound archery about 5 years ago, and I didn't like it one little bit. So anyway, I got into hunting back then. I never really took up bow hunting though until right when I started the YouTube channel about 5 years ago. I picked up compound bow just before that, actually. Before I started the YouTube channel was when I first tried a compound bow, because that's kind of when they were coming into New Zealand and everyone was getting them. And I thought, these things look awesome. And Jesus Christ, you drop them and they go out of tune, and trying to walk through the bush with an arrow knocked and it's catching on shit and, shaking. And it was like, holy shit, it's incredibly hard to shoot accurately, because I didn't watch any videos. I have any instruction on how to hold it and all the rest of it, right? So I eventually just got sick of it and threw the towel. And then a mate, or one of my viewers, I started the YouTube channel, and not long after I started it, a fella called Sam Harrison, he actually he was making bows, and I got a recurve bow. I can't remember what made me want to get back into it. I guess I just wanted more challenge in the raw, because I was thinking a bit sick of sneaking around with a rifle and blowing stags away. It was just so easy, right? Sneak up a roaring stag and shoot him. There wasn't any challenge in it. So I decided to get a bow to hunt during the raw for trophy hunting. So I got one. I got a recurve and taught myself how to shoot it, and had a look at a fella, Fred G. Asbell, or G. Fred Asbell. Take note of that. He's really, really good. I think G. Fred Asbel, Asbel. Very, very good instruction for recurve shooting and longbow shooting.
Okay.
And so I started to look at his technique, and he was all about instinctive and form and getting that form right and practice and practice and practice. And once you get your form right, and the more you shoot, work on that muscle memory, the more accurate you'll become. And I was amazed. I had no idea that you could just magic the arrow where it needed to go, which is essentially how instinctive shooting works, right?
Yes.
Repetition through subconscious and muscle memory. And I started to get a little bit better, and then I started to get deadly accurate with this thing, and I could, hit a tennis ball at 30 meters pretty consistently, and I was super amazed. And then I also really started to get back into hunting and get the rush of hunting again, because I first started hunting deer when I was 14. I'm 42 years old now, so I've been hunting for quite a while, and I can remember when I first started hunting deer, and every hunter probably can, you do heaps of hunting trips and you don't see anything, and then finally you see an animal and your heart just leaps up into your throat and you're pounding and your hands are shaking and your ears are pounding and it's boom, 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 shit, and you put a bullet up the spout and your gun's shaking like this and boom, and I just don't get that anymore with a gun. It's like, here's a deer, shoot it, bang, great, now I've got to gut it, carry the damn thing out and butcher it, and it's great, I've got more meat now, give some away, and I just lost that passion. And with bow hunting, just sneaking around in the woods with a couple of bits of stick, man, it's exciting. Even if you don't shoot anything, just sneaking around the forest and trying to be quiet, and then when you do see an animal and you're getting close, it's I was getting that rush again, and my hands were shaking, and I was like, holy shit, and I was sure the deer could hear the heart beating out of my ears. Boom, 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 my breathing quickened, and I was trying to control myself and bring my pulse back down. It was just full on, and I was hooked, man. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I didn't have to shoot the deer, I missed it. I heard a branch the deer in a way, but that's not the point. The point is that even if you don't shoot an animal, just getting out there and bow hunting is such a rush, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, especially when you are getting close to the animals. Just what it releases, like the endorphins it releases, but the adrenaline that it releases is intense. Like you're saying, like it's just hard to actually fathom until you have that first experience. And I mean, every other experience you have might not be as bad, but depending on the situation, like it might be that the first time you see a deer, it's pretty intense, and then the next time you see a deer, it's not as intense. But then all of a sudden you see a deer with big antlers, or you see a pig and it's right at your face, or something like that. Like it just changes every single time you see a new animal.
It's a really hard adrenaline to describe too. I've done a lot of adrenaline sports over the years, downhill mountain biking and wildwater kayaking and rock climbing and skiing and snowboarding and skateboarding and BMXing, and with all of those sports, with the adrenaline comes a certain amount of danger and fear as well, because you're on the edge. If you cock this one up, you're going to die. Bow hunting's not like that. You're not going to die. It's just all this adrenaline without the fear and without the extra nervousness. It's really weird. It's just like a straight hit of adrenaline without that other stuff thrown in there. It's hard to explain, isn't it?
It really is, and it's one of those situations where I think until you're in it, you can't ever understand what it's like in the thick of it all. And so, I mean, you still use stick bows, and I mean, something that I saw is that you've actually created your own bows as well. You made up a few of your own little bows to kind of go out and have a little hunt with. How'd you go with that stuff?
I've always made my homemade bows since I was a kid out of a wood we call lancewood. I've tried a few with Carnuka, which is similar to your Melaleuca. Tea tree, I think you call it over there, very similar wood. But I generally use a wood called a lancewood. It's very quick to make a survival bow or a south bow. They don't last very long. They lose their pop pretty quick. But I've always done that since I was a kid because we were poor. I grew up very poor. We couldn't afford bows. And my dad got us a soul fiberglass one. Then when that snapped, we had to make our own. So my uncle showed us how to make them out of lancewood. And we figured that we could make these real big, massive longbows using thick bits of lancewood. And these things would pull, I don't know, probably 60 pounds. We can only just pull them back. Sometimes we could only get into here and we just tiller them until we could pull them back.
Yeah.
So, they'd punch an arrow through a corrugated iron fence. So lots of grunt. So pretty exciting. But once again, we didn't know anything about spining arrows to the bow. We didn't know any of that carry on. So we weren't super accurate. But now that I know that stuff, I can make my own bow. Then I can spine the arrow so that the paradox, curves around the bow and flies true, so to speak. Pretty cool. But, I do prefer high performance equipment. Like my mate Sam makes these longbows and they shoot at something like 190 feet per second, which is incredibly quick for a longbow. 193 feet per second, I think, his bows are shooting at, which is incredibly fast for a longbow. And recurves, once again, and they just perform so well. So a lot of people get into making their own bows. I don't. I'm really impatient. I don't have the patience to I used to make bows, and I'd scrape them down, and I'd scrape, and I'd scrape, and I'd tiller, and I'd scrape, and I'd tiller, and I'd scrape. And these days, I just don't have time, man. I've got to go out hunting. You know?
Got to hunt and got to edit some videos.
Maybe it's something I'll get into a little bit further down the track once I've been bow hunting for a bit longer, because I've only been bow hunting for 5 years. So I'm not an old hand at it. So maybe when that starts to lose its appeal, I'll get a bit more traditional and start to make my own bows, bows and own arrows.
I think that's the cool thing about bow hunting is that it does have so many like alleys to go down. Like realistically, you can start by just buying a bow, and then all of a sudden you've got fletching your own arrows and also like creating your own strings, and then you can get into the whole side of the technicality of it all. Like it's pretty crazy. For you, like I mean, transitioning from being a gun hunter to a bow hunter, what was your kind of biggest, I guess, realization of this is a different sport almost? Like, okay, hunting with a gun is to an extent, it is its own piece. And then all of a sudden when we transition to hunting with a bow, there's a hell of a lot of an extra hardness to it. What was kind of like the first realization for you, and what were those realizations from the transition?
Well, the first one was when I actually went deer hunting with a bow, and I was proper hunting. I wasn't just cruising around not expecting to see animals like I did when I was a kid. We used to just go out and shoot possums or birds or anything that moved. But my first time hunting with a compound bow when I got it 6 years ago, that, you know, and actually sneaking through the forest and being quiet and having to be extra sneaky, that kind of was the hook for me there. And then the real hook was the first time I saw an animal, and I was on river clearing, river flats. I was walking up and I saw the deer, and with a gun I could have shot it then, but I realized, shit, I'm still way too far away to be able to hit this thing. So I took my boots off and I was on my bare feet, and I had to sneak and get closer, and I was crawling. I was hot and sweaty, and the sweat was pouring off me, and the blood was pounding, and I was getting closer and closer, and you know, the deer would stop and look up and feed, and I was looking around, I couldn't see any others. I was like, wow, there's going to be another one here somewhere, and I'd look up and I was like, almost close, and then I'd get the arrow and I'd pull it back, and then there, and it turned around. I was like, shit, and I'd back down again. I'd sneak around, and then it took off, and that was it. And oh man, that was full on.
Yeah,
you know, that took maybe 40 minutes or an hour to sneak up in this damn thing, and I almost threw the towel down. It's like, fuck this. I'm getting my gun back. Pardon my French. I didn't. I stuck and I persevered. And I think when they finally nail something with the bow and that arrow hits it and you just hear that thud, and it's very similar to a gunshot thud, you know, and then the animal takes off. It doesn't just fall over like it does the gun. And, oh, when did I hit it? I'm sure the shot was good. And you go, oh, find some blood. And then you track it down, and then you find the arrow, and there's more blood, and yeah, it's really exciting, and there's all that extra stuff that you don't get with a rifle, unless you gut shoot it or blow its leg off and you never find it again. But with the deer, you know you're going to find it if it's a good shot, and it's really exciting.
And did you start on deer or did you start on goats with your bow?
On goats, actually. My first hunt was with a goat when I was younger, and we never got it. We put our couple of arrows into a couple of goats and they ran away. But it's not really exciting. I don't get the same rush out of hunting goats because they're just so stupid and they're so easy to hunt. You can just sneak up on them and shoot one pretty much. It's not like deer. Deer have this weird sixth sense that other animals don't seem to have.
Yeah, they really do.
They just know you're there sometimes. The wind can be right, everything can be in your favor, and the deer will just look up and peg you.
Out of nowhere. I've actually got my first goat hunt coming up in a few weekends' time, which I'm excited for because it's something new. It's a new species, but from what I've been told, they're all pretty dumb. So I am kind of looking forward to it just to witness it myself and see what the experience is like. But someone was telling me the other day that when a goat spots you, they just look at you and you pretty much stuffed for a good 20 minutes. You just have to stand still. They'll just keep looking at you, the nannies.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And if you're full camo, totally, it's what sold me on camo too, actually, was bow hunting. If you're totally camoed out, if you don't move, they'll go back to feeding again. You can just keep sneaking up on them. It's totally sold on camo. I never used to be. I was like, oh, camo's for those American dicks that cruise around head to toe. And I actually went hunting with one of those American dicks. He was my client, and he wasn't a dick. He was Craig was his name. He's probably listening to this. Hi, Craig. He was he was actually a good fella. He was into long range shooting, but he was right into his camo. And I was just, holy crap, this guy had face mask and gloves and head to toe, and he sprayed that UV crap on and the scent mask and all the rest of it. And we got close to some chamois, and I was guiding him, shot a chamois, and another 3 chamois took off downhill, and I took him up with the chamois, and he started gutting it and dressing it out and doing his stuff. And I said, I'm just going to walk down the hill and film these other 3 chamois on the ridgeline. So I did, and I got the camera set up, and they were mucking around. Anyway, he finished doing the stuff, and he came down the hill to where I was, and I said, I'll jump up and scare them away. I'll get a shot of them bouncing off down the hill. And he did. He jumped up and started waving, and one of the chamois stood up and looked at him, and the other two just sitting down, and then he started waving his arms, and then another one stood up, and the third one was still sitting down looking at him. I was like, what the hell's wrong with these things? They're only about 60 meters away. They were pretty close.
Yeah.
And I was dressed all in black. I had a black T-shirt on and green shorts and bare legs. And as soon as I stood up, they just bolted. It was a real eye-opener for me.
It just looked like a tree, right? Yeah.
Actually works, yeah. So I started using it. And then I can remember the first time I closed the gap on a stag. You get those dogs under control,
I know, right? Oh my God, I've got a remote somewhere, but I just can't find it.
I'd have shocked the little buggers.
Well, it's actually like a full training collar. It's really good when I've got it.
Yeah, they do work good, don't they? Give them a bit of a vibrate. Yeah, you find your shot collar there.
There it is. Got it. All right, continue.
Sweet. So I can remember the first time I tried camouflage, full on head to toe, face painted, gloves, the whole works, bow hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the raw. I was hunting roaring stags, and I closed the gap on a deer, and he was on the other side of a whole bunch of windfall when he he cut around. I was like, oh no! And I was caught in the middle of this windfall. I was right out there, and he come over the rise, and he saw me in the middle of this windfall, and he froze, and I froze, and we stood there looking at each other. And I was about 50 meters away, so I was almost close enough for a shot. And so I thought I'm just going to really slowly walk towards him, and I was walking over the branches, and I stumbled and I cracked the branch, and he kind of went like this, but he didn't take off. He didn't know what it was because of the camo. And I got closer. I couldn't believe this is working. I was like, holy shit, I'm going to get him. And I got closer, and I slowly got an arrow out of my quiver, and I knocked it, and then I closed the last 5 meters, and I was pulling back, and he legged it over the hill. And so I barked at him and roared again, and he stopped, and he came back for another look, and after he took off, I just crashed through all the stuff, so I got up to the little rise, and then I roared and grunted, and he came back around again, and I pinged him. I stuck him right through the brisket, I never again. He got away with my shot. But the fact, the point of the matter is, the camo actually worked, and he didn't know what it was, and he bolted, but he came back in for another look, and I've been totally sold ever since.
Yeah, definitely. I actually had one experience where I was literally 10 meters from one. I saw him coming from around a bush, and I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? I didn't have an arrow nocked or anything, so I just crouched down. And we came eye to eye for it felt like half an hour. It was probably a minute. And then he kept walking on, and as I stood up, it just was enough to alert him, and he just took off because he knew something was up, but he wasn't scared enough to see me that close to be able to be like, no, that's something that shouldn't be here. So he just kind of stopped and looked for a little bit, and then he just kept moving, which I thought was incredible.
Oh, it's crazy, eh? It really is. Yeah. Totally sold on the old camouflage.
Yeah, not a bad do at all. I think something that's really cool is the Kings of the Wild that you were talking about before, the TV series you got to do. And so my understanding of it was that you partnered up with a pretty famous chef from over in England, maybe, or he was from.
Yep. And he was an English fella, Matt Tibbett.
And so you guys would go out in the wild. You would be the hunter and provider, and he would be the cooker, essentially, for the show.
That's right.
And I saw maybe a 5-minute or 2-minute snippet of it where you caught yourself a raccoon, I think it was, and or something of that sort, and he ended up burning the shit out of it and making a burnt meal for you rather than a delicious one like it was meant to. What was the whole experience of the show, and what was the goal around the show?
Well, it was originally going to be called Lost and Starving, and they were going to put us into these remote locations, and I was meant to try hunt stuff and fail. And the chef was there, and he was meant to. We were both pretty much going to be starving and hungry and not catching anything and having a miserable time. And he was going to get fucked off because I wasn't shooting at anything and he wasn't cooking anything, and I was going to get annoyed at him because, But it turned out that I actually smashed it. So they changed the name of the show from Lost and Starving to Kings of the Wild, because our first location, which was Mexico, which was actually that was the raccoon episode. Behind, I think they were on screen. The raccoon episode was second or third, but that was our first experience filming. Mm-hmm. And we got there and found cactus to eat. We found some watermelons, but they didn't have those in the show.
Yeah,
I shot a couple of pheasants, which were protected, so they didn't make it either. I shot a turkey. I suspect the turkey may have been placed there because it didn't take off. It busted me. I seen it, and it saw me, and it just kept feeding. I was like, oh. And No one ever told me, but I'm pretty sure the turkey was a tame turkey that they actually put there. It wasn't a wild turkey, man. I've heard about these wild turkeys.
Yeah.
They can spot an ant fart at 50 meters, and this thing saw me in plain view sneaking up a creek with my cowboy hat on, my Kuba and my leather vest and my bow, and I wasn't being stealthy at all. And I still managed to get it.
Yeah.
But that raccoon was on the same, and that thing was gangster as. I've seen raccoons in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
This was in Mexico, man. These Mexican raccoons are banditos. This thing was solid. It was big. It was built like a brick shithouse. It was a gangster over. It was. Luckily, it was dead. I snared it. I caught it in a snare. So when I picked it up, and it was heavy, man. It was as heavy as a small dog or a medium-sized dog, and it was disgusting. It was a male, so it had the balls, and because it had been strangled to death, it was just kind of slightly bloated. It was gross. It actually tasted pretty good, despite the fact that he cocked it up. But that was incredibly challenging to bow hunt in a foreign country.
Mm.
And to make matters worse, they wouldn't let me bring my own bow. They provided one for me, and it was only probably a 40-pound. The arrows weren't spined properly, so they flew all over the place. It was just a shit homemade bow.
Yeah.
So I was pretty unlucky I got anything with it. And then on the next episode, I bought my own bow. I said, I'm not using your shit bow, I'm bringing my own. But it was a bit of a cock-up on their behalf. We went to all these different locations. We went to Mexico. We went to Croatia. We went to Finland. We went to Southeast Asia. We filmed in Panama. And a lot of the places we couldn't actually shoot the animals, like Mexico, for example, those 2 pheasants, I wasn't allowed to shoot those, but we decided to shoot first and ask questions later because, you know what, see something. Is it a speckled gold bloomin' paradox pheasant, or is it the one we're allowed to shoot? And I was like, bang, shoot it. And then it was a shame we couldn't use them because I blew one's head right off its body. It was awesome. It was about 6 feet away, and we spooked them, and one flew behind us, landed right next to us. I just turned around, the camera was right there, and I just knocked its head clean off. It was such a good shot. But we weren't allowed to use it. But in Finland, for example, it was a frozen lake. It wasn't hunting season. We weren't allowed to shoot deer. We weren't allowed to hunt pheasants. We weren't allowed to hunt the geese and the ducks. And all the geese and ducks were flying into the corner of the lake where the creek was flowing out, because that was the only part that wasn't solid ice, right? That was where the moving water was. And every night, hundreds of geese and ducks would fly into the corner of the lake, but we weren't allowed to shoot them. So it was quite frustrating, but quite rewarding at the same time. And it was it was a good experience. I think the thing that I took out of it most was how people live in poverty in all these third world countries. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
It was it was really touching. It really made me appreciate what we've got back in New Zealand and Australia, where even the poorest of the poor in these countries live like kings compared to some of these other peoples in other parts of the world, you know.
Yeah,
it was a really
definitely. Going to just even any part of Southeast Asia, you see that pretty quickly as well. Like you'll see extreme slumps to extreme riches in some of those places, and the poverty is just absolutely crazy. It's quite bizarre.
It is bizarre, and the division's massive, isn't it? There seems to be no middle ground. You're either filthy rich or you're dirt poor. It really is heartbreaking.
Yeah, definitely. And so, I mean, of those places that you got to go and got to check out, where was your favorite place of the few different locations that you went to?
Oh, probably Mexico, I think. Because Mexico was the first episode, and we just smashed it. We actually went downhill from there. The other countries weren't as easy to gather food in. I think we just got lucky in Mexico. And Mexico was really exciting because it was right at the time of year where they move all the hashish.
Yeah.
And it was very, very dangerous. And what happens over there, 10 years ago or something, the government tried to stamp out the war on drugs, and they stepped up to the plate. The Americans came in, and all the local gangsters went, fuck you. And they kidnapped people and chopped heads off, and there was rioting and fighting. So now what happens, the government realised they'd cocked up, they can't stamp out the drug trade because that's how these people make money.
Yeah.
In the poorest parts of Mexico, there's no other industry. Hashish is the only money they make. It's the only chance that anyone's ever going to get a job or get ahead in life. So what happens is the police talk to the local gangsters, and they say, we're going to have a roadblock on this particular road on this day at this time. You need to send 2 trucks through there, and we'll bust those trucks, and there'll be newspaper reporters, and we'll arrest a couple of your guys, and they'll go to jail. Meanwhile, this other road's open. The other 300 trucks that you've got can go through there without any problems. But what happens, right? So they've got the army and they've got the police. The gangsters also dress up as a police, and the gangsters also dress up as soldiers. So they've got this false army that cruises around holding other gangs to ransom, to gunpoint, and confiscating crops. Because they'll go and they'll burn one paddock, but they'll leave the other 5, and that's how it works. So they've got the real army running around and the real police, and then they've got the fake army and the fake police also conducting raids on the other gangs. It's all very confusing. We actually had a bit of a standoff. During that time, it was crazy. It was crazy. And I was in Mexico. I asked one of the local guys. I was like, my dad smoked a lot of weed. I smoked weed when I was a teenager. I don't smoke it anymore. But I figured, hey, I'm in Mexico. I'm going to smoke some weed over here because they've got this is where the best weed in the world comes from.
Yeah.
And I asked the local fixer, and he just said, go talk to the chief of police. And I was like, are you crazy? I'm not going to ask the cops for weed. He said, no, just ask. Trust me. That's who they have lots of weed. And sure enough, like the chief of police rode with me in the vehicle. We had a fully armed escort, so we had 2 fully armed vehicles out the front with a massive big gun on it, like a gun mounted on the back, and 2 vehicles behind and then our convoy was in the middle with the film crew. We had about 20 people on the film crew. So we had a fully armed escort, and then when we got right out to the middle of nowhere, out the Copper Canyon, the local police chief wanted me to jump in his car so he could yarn to me. And so that's when I asked him, and he said, oh, no problem. You want a big baggie or a small baggie? And I just couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, just a little bit. And then for the next couple of days, police officers were coming up to me continually and just giving me bags of weed. Yeah. So I don't know, I must have had about 10 ounces or something of weed because I couldn't say no thanks. I'd, cheers. And I didn't know what to do with it all. And I was trying to give it to the film crew and they didn't want it. And I was giving it to locals and they were, cheers. So we had a bit of a standoff with the false army. Well, it turns out it was the real army, but we didn't know that because we had an army guard and the police guard with us to protect us from the false army. And then lo and behold, who turns up? But it's the false army, except it was the real army. But they hadn't been told that the other army was in the same area. So those guns came out and there was yelling and screaming. And me and the other English guys like, bugger this, bro, let's go. And we just dipped over the side of the canyon and got out of sight. And everyone else was freaking out. And we watched it from a safe distance. And it was really tense, man. There was guns pointed and yelling. And we thought it was going to start boom, 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 boom. And there'd be a massive murder. But they got on the radio and they sorted it out, and and then they all come over and they had like coffee and tea and cigarettes and they were talking to each other and stuff, and it all simmered down again. But I had no idea that that's what happened in Mexico, and just seeing how these people lived and the generosity of the people. We'd be invited into people's houses and they had nothing, and they'd empty their cupboards out to feed me and the film crew and the English chef and the fire, whoever else was with us. And that happened several times. We got invited into someone's home and they literally clean their cupboards out. I went back and we gave them all of our cash. We gave them a whole bunch of money just for their generosity. And it was really amazing to see these people that had nothing but were such a generous people, because I've never seen Mexicans before. You only see Trump waving his finger around going, oh, bloody Mexicans coming up here. And you see them in the old cowboy movies and all they do is drink tequila and shoot guns. Yeah. I had no experience with real Mexicans, but they're actually totally not what I expected, And
we I had a very similar experience. I used to play in a band and we used to tour a fair bit, and we toured through Southeast Asia a few times. And we were in Indonesia, and it's literally like some of the poorest towns I've ever been to. Yet these people were taking us into their homes and they would give us everything. They literally they gave up a day of religion to be with us and look after us as visitors, which is absolutely crazy. It's almost like blasphemy for them. But they literally fed us up. They did everything for us. They'd pick us up from the airports. They'd take us to all the locations we need to be in. They'd make sure that we're always safe. And it was a really cool experience. And it kind of really shows you what contribution can do for an individual, like those people who have nothing yet they're so willing to give everything because they get so much more out of it for themselves.
It was a real eye-opener for me. It made me realize how selfish I'd been my whole life, and it totally changed who I was as a person, I think, traveling to these third world countries. And was it a boy band? You look like you could be in a boy band.
Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
What sort of band was it?
It was actually a hardcore band, a screamo band.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, so I used to be the singer in the band, and it was cool. It was a good experience while it lasted. We got around for a good few years, and we got to tour Australia several times, and then we got to go over to Southeast Asia twice. It was good. It was good fun. Something a bit different from that realm into the hunting realm. It's definitely a different outcome, but yeah, it's cool.
So you're relatively new to this whole hunting thing, are you?
Yeah, man. I've only been doing it for really the last year and a bit. I actually grew up on a property when I was younger, and we used to shoot with 22s and stuff like that, go out rabbit hunting, and I was always a full outdoorsman. I always loved being outdoors and always have, but kind of moved into the cities and backed away from it all for a long part of my life, and then recently had a big calling to get back out. So had a few friends that were into archery, and every other year we go back up to the family farm for Easter, and I was like, fuck. We always play like different games, so we'll get the slingshots out and shoot these plates, and we'll get some golf clubs and smack a ball. And I ended up going to the hunting shop to get some new strings, new rubbers for my slingshot one time, and saw that they had a little recurve bow on the wall. And I was like, "How much for that?" And he said, $200. I'm like, done. So I ended up buying one and took it up for a family hobby, and turned out that I just got entrenched in it myself and started a podcast because I wanted to learn more. And here I am 20 episodes later and getting to talk to people from all around the world and getting to talk to all different bow hunters and kind of learn from them. And the experience that is bought for me and the experience that I'm getting to give to others is really cool. And getting people reach out kind of weekly, which is really, really, even daily pretty much, just saying, hey dude, thank you so much for starting the podcast. Like, it's really got me into bow hunting again, or it's got me into archery. I was a rifle hunter. Now I really want to try archery, and the things that you're kind of finding out on your podcast are really helping me out. So it's been a really cool experience so far. That's for sure.
Man.
Yeah, so something
and deer hunting and bow hunting there is, there's hunting, there's rabbit hunting and there's small game hunting, but deer hunting's something else, isn't it? Once you start hunting deer, and then once you start bow hunting deer or the bigger game animals, man, it really is. It's just so challenging and so rewarding. It's
definitely. Actually, I haven't been successful with deer yet. I've shot pigs and I've shot a dingo and I've shot rabbits with my bow. But I still haven't got deer. I've chased them plenty, that's for sure. But I've always been like, they always get me on the wind. I had my first proper shot at one last week or 2 weeks ago, and it just went a little shy of him, just shot underneath him. And yeah, there's a lot of lessons to be learnt, but I'm fucking pumped on it,
Oh, mate, that's a success. If you see a deer when you're deer hunting, that's a successful hunt in my view. You don't even have to shoot the animal, and that's what hunting is about for me. It's not necessarily smacking an animal over. It's good, but it's the whole experience, and every hunt's a successful hunt. I guess that's why my YouTube channel's reasonably popular, because I don't always shoot a deer and I still make a video of it, and we have failed hunts or I'll lose an animal. So that's reality of it, and it's still a successful hunt, right? You've still got that memory, haven't you?
Oh, exactly right. There's so many different experiences, and something that I really love about your channel is the rawness of it, but also that you're always trying to educate others on the different traps that you've learned over time, or the different foods that you've come across. How did you come into learning bits and pieces about the landscape and what foods are edible or what plants are edible when you're out and about?
Oh, it's a real hard one. I've always known of a few basic plants, and I just wanted to, I guess, I don't know how long ago it was, 20 years ago, I wanted to learn a bit more about what you could eat in the New Zealand bush, and there weren't very many resources letting you know what you could eat. So I just had to go with what I could find on the internet or what I could scrape out of other people's intellect. And I came across a book, it might be right here actually, it's not, it's outside. So I came across a book about 8 years ago, from a local fella. Andrew Crow was his name, and he wrote a book on native edibles in the New Zealand bush, and it just blew my mind how much of the stuff you could eat.
Yeah.
There's so many things to eat out there, and it kind of holds true for other countries as well. There's basic ways to test food to see if they're edible. It takes a couple of days. You can do the skin test, and then you can do the taste test, and you can eat a little bit test, see if it makes you sick, or give your mate some, see if he dies. It's not so bad in New Zealand. You guys have got so much poisonous shit over in Australia. Yeah, everything's out to get you out of there. We're pretty lucky in New Zealand. We don't have a heck of a lot of real poisonous things. We don't have snakes or very venomous spiders. So we can eat a lot more of our plants than you can over there. But I guess from a survival point of view, I'm a little bit paranoid about this end of days thing, and we've got a big alpine fault on the west coast here that could rupture at any given time, and if it does, we're going to be locked off from the other outside world. Everyone's going to run out of food. No one's going to have anything to eat, so people who don't know what they can eat in the bush are going to go hungry, maybe even starve. And I just thought it would be great to be able to know what to eat in the bush in case I ever did get lost, or in case I ever did need to to be totally self-sufficient.
Mhm.
You know, there was a nuclear war or the Australians invaded or whatever. We could hole up in the mountains and shoot them as they tried to come up and get us. Yeah, it'd be like the Anzac Corps. It's funny how we've got this really fierce sporting rivalry, haven't we, Australia and New Zealand? And we're
Yeah,
always
definitely.
at each other's throats with the cricket and the rugby. But as soon as there's a world war and you put us together to fight a battle, we go in there and we clean up every single time. First World War, Second World War, we've gone in there, the Anzac Corps, and just smoked everybody. And it's kind of a...
I think all the
makes me
Aussies
proud
hide
to get
behind the
things
big
like that.
Maoris.
What's that?
All the Aussies hide behind the big Maoris. They are.
Yeah, they're pretty scary, us Māori fellas, eh, bro? Gotta watch out, we chew.
You know what though? Even though most of the Māori boys are all like huge giants and look scary as you talk to them, oh hey bro, how you doing? Like they're some of the nicest people you'll ever meet.
Oh, it's crazy. It's so intimidating, yet such a good heart, eh? It's the best of both worlds.
You just don't want to get them angry. That's all.
No, you certainly don't.
I was actually very surprised. I've kind of replanted my veggie patch recently and just let it grow. We've got Holly Benue tomatoes and Holly Benue sweet potato and turmeric and everything growing. And I've got a heap of weeds that are coming through. And my stepmom came over the other day and she's like, oh, that's milk thistle. And this is, it was another one that I could eat. She's like, these are all just edibles. Don't worry about getting rid of them. Just whenever you want to have a salad, come out and grab them. And I literally just thought they were weeds that I had to get rid of. But it's kind of cool when you don't even have to plant them and they rock up. Like there's actually a lot of things you can get into that you probably don't have an actual understanding of. So I think that basic bush survival is really important to learn and figuring out what foods are edible and which foods aren't. We went out on a hunt, me and a mate, and we found these big mushrooms. They look like field mushrooms. So we picked a whole meat bag full of them and took them home, and we used this little app called Plant Snap. And when we took the photo of it and sent it in, they're like, no, don't eat that. It's like a mushroom that looks exactly the same as field mushrooms, but it's not a field mushroom, and you'll get diarrhea and vomiting for days on end if you eat them. So we just got lucky on that one experience.
Oh, mate, that's one thing I won't mess with. I won't mess with mushrooms. There's so many edible mushrooms over here in New Zealand, but the ones that are deadly will kill you.
Yeah.
Or they'll, leave you retarded for the rest of your life. More retarded. I'm retarded enough as it is. I don't want to get any more retarded. Can I say that? Is that going to make the podcast? I don't know. Probably not. But that's one thing I don't mess with actually is mushrooms. I know there's a couple of varieties I can eat, and I just stick with those because it's not worth the risk.
Definitely. One video that I actually got onto of yours was about red deer. Is that kind of the main deer that you're following around there?
There is, yeah. We only have red deer in the area that I live in. There's a couple of very small pockets of fallow.
Yep.
But there's maybe 8 deer in one pocket and 10 in another, so I just leave those alone.
Yeah.
I do a wee bit of hunting fallow on the other side of the mountain and other parts, but where I live on the whole west coast, there's only red deer here. We don't have any other kind of deer. Unless you go right down a fjord and then they have the wapiti or the elk down there, but that's quite a lot. It's like a 13-hour drive from where I live.
They look incredible. That'd be a one-day hunt for sure. That'd be awesome. But when it comes to the reds, what are you looking for when you go looking for them? And obviously, the landscape might be a little bit different, but I mean, based off of your videos, you're pretty much trying to find good feedlots and good open areas where they would come out into. Is that kind of the main game plan when you go out hunting for your red deer around you?
That's right. Yeah, I prefer to hunt in the springtime and early summer when they're on the river flats. Because then it concentrates them pretty much. It sucks them out of the bush onto the grass. And I really like stalking river flats. I like how you can see the deer from a couple of 100 meters away. Then you can nick into the bush and sneak closer and closer and closer. And I like bush hunting as well. It's quite hard to shoot the animals in the winter in the bush because they head to shady gullies with a 5-finger in the pate. So pretty much if I'm trying to find deer, first of all, I'll identify an area that's not too steep, that's got lots of rolling country or, lots of river terraces or plateaus.
Yep.
And somewhere where there's lots of grass, say it might be a big, huge bush area with only a small amount of grass. So that's a really good place to go in the springtime to see if there's deer, because if there's deer in the area, they'll be on the grass. And then if it's wintertime, depending on what time of year it is, so autumn, they start to go off the grass and they'll start to eat the 5-finger and the pate. And then springtime, they'll start to eat another tree called the kamahi. So depending on what time of year it is and where the plants that they're eating grow, that's where I'll go hunting.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just the springtime, early summer is so easy because they're going to be on the grass. They come out and feed on the grass. So if you can find grass next to bush, 9 times out of 10, you're going to find animals.
And something that you explained pretty well is the size of a deer based on their footprints. Could you kind of explain how that works?
Uh, I guess it'd probably work for humans as well. I don't actually know. All four-legged animals. Generally, if you've got you can tell if it's a male or a female because of the shape of the hoof of the dew claws. So
Yep.
hinds have dew claws as well, but they sit a bit higher up because they're not as heavy as stags. The dew claws won't break through unless it's on very soft sands. You can tell if it's a male or female. You can tell how old the deer is because of the size of the print, and also if it's a very big print, and the back print usually lands right in the front foot.
Mm-hmm.
But if it lags back a bit, that means they're getting a bit stiff in the hips.
Yeah.
So they're a little bit older, and a really old animal will have a real big lag. There'll be a big gap in between the front foot and the back foot because their hips are so stiff that back leg's not coming as far forward as it may do. And then, of course, you can tell if it's got a big head on it, if it's reasonably firm sand. The front toes will be quite splayed because there's more weight on there, so it'll press the toes apart more. And you can generally tell how high the animal is by the distance in between its feet. So that'll be a good guesstimate, kind of mid-shoulder height, the gap in between its legs. So
it's very interesting. It all makes a lot of sense when you say it like that, but it's until you hear it, you never know why. Like, you wouldn't understand that previously. Something that we were talking about before the podcast is actually how easy it is for hunters to go across to New Zealand, especially from Australia. It's a short flight, but then what's the tag that we need? Not the tag, the license that we need to get essentially to be able to hunt.
It's incredibly difficult. There's so many hoops to jump through. It's probably not worth coming over here because there's not many animals because of all the 1080 poison, and just stay in Australia.
Fair enough.
Basically. No, what the heck? No, it is reasonably easy to hunt over here. We have the advantage of being able to hunt on all public land. So if it's public land, you're allowed to hunt. You just have to get a Department of Conservation form and have a gun license to carry a gun.
Yeah.
And if you're a bow hunter, the bow has to be over 45 pounds. So you're not allowed to hunt on public land with a bow that's under 45 pound, and you're not allowed to hunt with shotguns or rimfire cartridges on public land.
And there's no season for you guys? Like, you can hunt all year round?
We can hunt all year round. We're incredibly lucky. Because of all the 1080 poison, it is getting harder to find animals because they throw that shit all over the place, and they're just ramping up the poison program. But we can hunt all year round, and we can shoot as many animals as we like.
How much of a difference have you seen from the 1080?
Oh, massive. It just wipes the deer out. The deer are one of the first animals to eat it. It's really hard on the deer. It's quite hard on the birds too. The birds don't eat the poison. There's a very small amount of birds that will eat the poison and die, but what's killing the birds are the rat plagues. When a rat population is put under pressure, they have bigger litters and they breed quicker. So the litters are more closely spaced than if there's a healthy rat population or a medium rat population. And the government isn't putting any research into finding out why 1080 is working in some areas, which it is. It's doing a great job in some areas, and in other areas, it's not working at all. And it's a real shame. They're misleading the public. This one valley in particular, the Landsborough Valley. I've been going up the Landsborough Valley every year for the last 23 years, rafting, and that was way before they started 1080ing back in the day. And I've seen the decline in bird life, and a massive decline in bird life up there since they've started the poisoning program. And yet they're bringing out propaganda telling everyone that they're doing a great job, and the Landsborough Valley bird life has doubled. The bird life's doubled up there since they started the poisoning program, which is a gross misrepresentation of what's actually going on. So
the rats are eating the 1080 poison, and the birds are eating the rats. That's the issue?
No, I think that the rats eat the birds, right? Because we don't have any native mammals. We don't have any native mammals. All of our native fauna are birds. We have the bat and the dolphin are only two native mammals, but all our other animals introduced and they're considered a pest. That's why we can hunt year round. That's why there's no seasons. And the rats in some areas, they eat the beech seeds, the seeds from our native tree, and then the rat populations boost, and then Doc drops the poison, knocks the rats down, then the rats boost again, and the birds suffer. So it's brutal. I mean, if 1080 is used every single year, consecutively, year after year after year after year, then it works. But the government doesn't have enough money to do that over the whole country. It's too expensive because they have to use helicopters to drop it. So what they do, they spread a little bit of poison here, then they'll go do somewhere else. In 5 or 10 years later, they'll come back, they'll put a little bit more poison here, and it's just not working. Meanwhile, the bird life's decreasing. the rats and the stoats, and it doesn't kill stoats, ferrets, and cats. There's a very small window where they eat another animal that's eaten 1080 that will kill them. But it's crazy. It's not working, but it's a huge money-making industry here in New Zealand. And there's a big gravy trail going all the way up to the politicians. And yes,
Not good.
I could go on and on about 1080 for bloody hours. So we'll stop talking about that now.
No, it's interesting to hear. And I mean, something that has kind of come about is because of getting into hunting and having a care for the animals from that side of view, there's obviously that whole conversation about the poisoning and about the helicopter shooting and bits and pieces. And obviously there is an extent where they need to be doing it, but to what extent does it matter? Like, I don't know. It's eventually going to wipe out something, and then who will be blamed? Because they'll probably wipe their hands clean of it, really.
Well, that's right. And history shows when humans try to muck with nature's balance, it never goes well. It never goes well. It always backfires. And that's essentially what's happening over here. So I think they need to concentrate their efforts in certain areas and let the rest of the country go free. I don't know what the answer is. A lot of people don't. I'm all about finding solutions, but the government doesn't care. They just so fervently believe that what they're doing is good and right and proper, and there's so much propaganda pushing the facts. So scientific studies, there's heaps of scientific studies out there showing the benefits of using 1080 poison. You can do a scientific study on the benefits of drinking red wine, right? And you can publish that and say, these are the benefits of drinking red wine. And all the winos are going to go, here, it's good for you. Raise your glass, a toast to red wine. Yet they don't publish the negative effects of drinking red wine, which far outweigh the positives, right? So it's the general public have just lapped up all this propaganda, and they firmly believe that it's the right thing to do when it's not. People on the ground, like myself, who spend time in both areas that have been 1080'd, areas that haven't been 1080'd, can see the difference. So it's crazy. It really is.
We've got a whole national food program built on that, really, like based on the facts of science being misled. Really, it's like, oh, this is more beneficial for us, so we'll lead it that direction. It's a very interesting topic, that's for sure. When it comes to coming to New Zealand, I think two of the animals that people are really stoked to get across and see are the chamois and the tars. Are they typically just high ridge animals?
They are high alpine. The chamois will come down a bit lower. It's the last 10 years they've started to come down into the bush for some reason. No one knows why. Maybe it's helicopter pressure. Generally, they were always a high alpine creature, but they've started to live in the bush now. And the tar have as well, because of helicopter pressure. They have started to move to lower altitudes. Yeah. It's very rare to find a tar down at sea level, but it's quite common to see chamois down at sea level. And they're only in the South Island. They're not in the North Island. And generally, tar are a high alpine creature. They'll live right on the tops above the bush line, but they are moving down, especially the older mature ones. The old mature tar realise that it's dangerous up top and they'll live in the bush now, whereas 15, 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. They all lived right up the top of the mountain.
And so are they both relatives of the goat?
No, they're not. The chamois is an antelope.
Okay.
So it's from the antelope family, and the tar's a big stinky goat.
Yeah. And so when it comes to actually eating them, what do they taste like? Are they pretty similar to deer? Are they pretty similar to goat? Like, what do they taste like?
The tar is actually pretty good. The tar is quite similar to red deer in taste. If you shoot them in the rut, though, they've got this really bizarre taste. Even the females don't taste any good in the rut for some reason. The bulls are pretty disgusting. They're only good for sausages or jerky.
Yeah.
But a young bull in the springtime or summer is actually quite good eating. Chamois, on the other hand, chamois tastes a little bit goaty. I don't like chamois. A lot of people like chamois. I'll put chamois in a stew, or marinate it in a stir fry, but I don't like chamois steaks. I don't like chamois roasts. A lot of people do, but I don't. So I don't know. It's hard to explain. The chamois kind of, I'd much rather eat a goat than a chamois.
Yeah. It's
a young goat.
It kind of just brought me back to watching one of your videos once, and I believe you cooked up all sorts of different things for your family, but possums being one, and getting them all to eat it first before you tell them what it is. What are some of the animals that you've eaten that might not be, I guess, seen as a common to eat animal?
Oh, hedgehogs, raccoon. I had that bloody raccoon in Mexico. That was nasty. Yeah, hedgehogs, they're pretty delicious, pretty disgusting though. You know, cooking a hedgehog up, peeling the spines off and eating it. You cook it guts and all, right?
Wow.
What else? Rats, I guess. Rats used to be a traditional mouldy food over here, so I've eaten a couple of rats. Pretty yuck. Actually, it's just meat, right? It's just the whole little ratty claws and everything, and the bones are so delicate. And there's not much meat on
Yeah,
this
it
thing.
wouldn't be much to it.
Yeah, well, I had my eyes closed. I didn't know what it was, or it was just eating meat out of a sandwich. I wouldn't care less.
Yeah.
What else? What other kind of disgusting foods? Oh, beetles and grubs and shit like that. But when you think about it, it's just what you're used to, right? And we look at the Chinese, for example. Everyone's like, oh, they eat all this weird shit, but they eat it out of necessity, and it's become traditional for them to eat it, because back in the day, if they didn't eat that shit, they starved. So therefore, it was brought into their diet. And mum and dad have been serving the kids grasshoppers and frogs and shit since they were kids, so they don't know any difference. To them, it's just normal food. It's just like having a nice cookie or a cracker to us. Nice grasshopper, delicious.
I have a friend who's down in Canberra, and she's just started growing her own crickets because she wants to eat them just for protein. It's apparently a really easy source to get, and they're actually pretty tasty. Apparently, I haven't ever tried them, but
they are pretty good. You just can't eat the back legs, because the back legs are really hard. They'll get stuck in your throat, choke you. So you got to take the legs off or eat the cricket. Remember to do that, or you'll choke on the back leg. I almost killed myself eating crickets. But they are great. You toast them up and they're delicious. They're crunchy and they kind of a nutty flavour there. They're really good eating.
Yeah, that's unreal. I think we might start to wrap things up, but I mean, it's been a really cool conversation. We've covered up on a lot, but one thing I did want to point people to is your Kiwi Bushman, the YouTube channel, but more so into the adventures and different things that you run. So you'll get a group together and you'll go down the river, you'll get to go hunting, you get to go fishing, you get to go whitewater rafting as you're on it, you get to have a helicopter flight in and out if it's kind of booked in that way. How do people kind of get in touch with you if they want to do something like that?
Just jump on the Eco Rafting website, so Eco Rafting New Zealand, or you can just Google Josh James and send me a direct message on Facebook or whatever. Yeah, and we do all sorts. We do corporate team building. I do personal one-on-one trips for men going through midlife crisis, a bit of life coaching. I do a fair bit of that.
Yeah.
I take people out alpine hunting. We want to shoot a tahr or a chamois, but don't know quite how to go about it because it's dangerous up there, man. It's just dangerous. There's a lot of shit that'll kill you in those mountains. So, yeah, we do all sorts of stuff and adventures. And if you just want to bowl around for a cup of tea, if you can figure out where I live, come around for a cup of tea.
There's actually there's an Australian hunter who's pretty well known, a bow hunter, who was over there recently, and he ended up getting helicoptered off the mountain, I'm pretty sure, because he ran into trouble. So he'd been over there many times, and this one time shit just went wrong, went south, and he ended up getting into a fair bit of trouble. But he got out of there alive and he's safe, but he had to have a few days in hospital to recover.
Yeah, mate, the mountains are dangerous, and even an experienced person can make mistakes, and they're not to be taken lightly. They kill a lot of people. Once a month, someone dies in our mountains. A hunter dies in our mountains on average once a month, so it happens a lot. They're dangerous.
One last question I have for you is bringing kids up in the wild, or bringing kids up the way that you have. What's kind of your philosophy around that side of things, of introducing them to the wild and how far you let them go?
Oh, I think it's really good. I think it's very good for kids to go camping. Mm-hmm. It teaches them patience. It teaches them initiative. It teaches them task completion and goal setting. I get them out there. I was like, this is the goal, kids. I don't know if any of your listeners have got kids, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, for crying out loud, focus on the task at hand. So we have set the goal. This is the goal. We break it down into little steps. Right, lighting the fire. What are we going to need to light the fire? Well, we need some big logs. We need some smaller logs. We need some tinder. We need a lighter or matches. We need somewhere to light the fire. And we need some river rocks to go around it. So we break all the little steps down. All right, let's start smashing those steps out. Then we start to do it. Then we light the fire. Or maybe the goal's hot water, and we have to light the fire to get the water boiling. So it's really good to teach them to complete the task at hand, set those goals, teaches them patience. Mm-hmm. Right? We've got to wait for that water to boil. If we want to have dinner, we can't just put it in the microwave or whack it on the stove. We've got to light the fire, prepare the dinner, put it in the pot, and cook it. If we want to go to bed, we have to pitch the tent, we have to blow our air mattresses up, we have to get the sleeping bags ready. So there's all these different things that teaches them persistence, patience. It really is. And I really noticed the difference in kids that we take rafting that are from New Zealand or Australia that have been camping with their parents to European and American kids that don't go camping. I mean, they're American European kids that have never been camping are as useless as tips on the bull. They don't know what to do. They stand around. They have to be badgered into doing stuff. You have to continually be on their case. Whereas kids that have been camping many a time, or hunting, especially hunters with their parents, they're so onto it. They see something that needs to get done and they get it done. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Really is. It's so good for kids.
it's definitely something I really appreciated was having that farm life when I was younger. It definitely taught me the way of like, well, no one's coming to do it for you, so you got to do it yourself. But I feel like a lot of adults could really learn from that as well as like the one, here's your goal, here's the task we need to do. There's one task that you need to do right now. Set your mind and focus on it, and that would save a lot of adults from a lot of the drama that they probably face throughout the day. But unfortunately, there's too many other pretty things that fly around and drive past that stop and procrastinate or make you procrastinate more.
Mate, that is so true. On our team building trips, there's one particular exercise we do which is really good. So we split the group up into two, and we'll say, right, there's one group, there's the other group. This is the goal. We are going to make a self-sourcing chocolate pudding in a cast iron camp oven on an open fire. And I was like, holy shit, that's impossible. How are we going to do that? So we split them up into two groups. One group, we give them all the ingredients, but no recipe and no instructions. The other group, we give them all the ingredients and we give them recipe and we give them instructions. And we say, right, go forth and make us a self-sourcing chocolate pudding. And the group with no recipe and no instructions, but all the ingredients, 99 times out of 100, they completely cock it up and you end up with this burnt charcoal, disgusting lump of yuck that you can't eat. It's inedible. And the group that we've given the instructions and the recipe and all the ingredients, they've never cooked over an open fire before. They never baked over an open fire. It's quite an art to it. They'll come back with this beautiful, beautiful chocolate cake with self-sourcing pudding all around it. And we tell them, this is a great analogy for life. You may have all the ingredients, but if you don't have a good recipe and you don't follow the instructions, you're never going to get a good result. And we really encourage people to go home and write their goals down and write their dreams down and write out a recipe and write out the instructions. And they may not get it right the first time. You can refine the recipe every time you cook. You try to cook up this magic in your life. You can refine the recipe and get it slightly better and slightly better. And eventually, even the biggest near seeming impossible goal can be achieved if you just break it down into tiny little steps. It's like hunting, right?
Yeah.
Climbing the mountain. You got to climb the mountain first. And you got to take that first step, or you're never going to shoot anything.
Yeah, dude, I love that. That's incredible. That's it's a lot of stuff that I try to do with the business stuff that I do, like with my business and the stuff that we do with our team is all about that side of things. Like, hey, let's break it down bit by bit. Let's get you stepping forward as a progression and make sure that we're always taking a step forward rather than taking too many steps backwards. Even though we talked about that earlier on, obviously in this situation, it's about always taking the steps forward. So.
It's crazy how that works. You can just magic shit up and make shit happen if you just write it all down, can't you? It really is incredible.
Yeah, it really is. Well, dude, thank you so much. This has been really insightful. I think the listeners are going to love it. For the listeners, if you did enjoy it, please share it around, because if you got a lot out of it, I know that one of your mates is definitely going to get something out of it too. Make sure you share the word of Joshua James around on Instagram at the Kiwi Bushman, as well as on YouTube, the same thing, Kiwi Bushman. You can find his page and give him a little check out. Hey, thanks heaps, Josh.
Awesome. Cheers, Matty.